I walked into my home office, expecting an ordinary Tuesday. Instead, I found Hannah and her brother Elliot sitting at my desk, bank statements spread out in front of them like they owned the place. They were smiling, that smug kind of smile that made my blood go cold. What the hell is this? I whispered. Hannah didn't even look up. She just kept that smile plastered on her face, while Elliot leaned back in my chair like he belonged there. The betrayal hit me like a freight train. Sudden, devastating, impossible to stop. These were the people I loved most. The people I had trusted completely. And they were stealing from me. They were actually stealing from me. My name is Mark, and I never thought the people closest to me would betray me like this. Before I continue the story, please subscribe and comment the city you are chatting from. Hannah's smirk widened. You'll never see it coming, Mark, she said softly. Those words echoed in my head as I stood frozen in the doorway. She was wrong. I would see it coming. But they wouldn't see what I was about to do. I sat in my car for 2 hours that night, shaking so hard I could barely hold the steering wheel. My mind kept replaying that moment. Hannah and Elliot at my desk, the bank statements, the confidence in her eyes like they'd already won. The heartbreak was suffocating. I'd married Hannah 5 years ago. I'd watched her grow, supported her dreams, built a life with her. Elliot had been my friend too, or so I thought. We'd gone on vacations together. We'd spent holidays together. They were family. But family doesn't steal. Family doesn't sit at your desk and smile while taking everything you've worked for. I sat there in the dark, remembering the good times. Picnics in the park, late-night conversations, the way Hannah used to look at me like I was her whole world. When did that change? When did I stop seeing what was right in front of me? My phone buzzed. An email notification. My heart stopped. It was an alert from my bank. Another suspicious transaction. They weren't even waiting. They were still stealing, still pulling money out while I sat here falling apart. I went back inside that night and pretended nothing was wrong. That was the hardest thing I've ever done. Hannah was in the kitchen making tea, humming to herself like she didn't just try to destroy me. Elliot was on the couch, scrolling through his phone, completely relaxed. They had no idea I'd seen them. No idea I knew what they were doing. I sat down on the couch across from them, and something inside me shifted. The heartbreak started turning into something else. Something colder. Something more dangerous. Fury. Pure, calculated fury. I studied their faces, looking for any sign of guilt, any crack in their arrogance. But there was nothing. Just confidence. Just smugness. That's when I realized something important. Elliot's weakness wasn't dishonesty. It was arrogance. He was so sure he was smarter than everyone else that he'd stopped being careful. Hannah was the same way. They both believed they'd already won. They believed I was too weak, too trusting, too naive to do anything about it. That night, lying in bed while Hannah slept beside me, I started planning. Quietly, carefully, patiently. The next morning, I woke up and checked my accounts properly. Every penny was gone. Not most of it. All of it. Savings, investments, checking, everything. My emergency fund. The money I'd saved since I was 18 years old. Completely drained. The despair hit first. A wave of panic that made me feel like I was drowning. How was I supposed to pay my mortgage? How was I supposed to survive? Then the anger came. It burned so hot, I thought I might explode. I scrolled back through the transaction history, watching as Hannah had systematically transferred money to an account she shared with Elliot. The dates went back months. Months. They'd been planning this, preparing, stealing from me bit by bit while I went about my life trusting them. I saw the red flags now, things I'd been too blind to notice. The late-night conversations that stopped when I entered the room. The way Hannah had suddenly wanted to manage our finances together. The time Elliot accidentally saw my password. It was all there. All the signs I'd ignored because I loved them. Because I thought love meant giving people the benefit of the doubt. I couldn't fight this head on. The money was gone. The accounts were drained. But maybe I didn't need to fight them directly. Maybe I needed to be smarter. I went to work the next day like nothing had happened. That's when I discovered something interesting. My company was launching a new initiative, a competition of sorts. Different departments would compete for a significant promotion and budget. The position would go to whoever proved they were the best leader, the best strategic thinker, the best at problem solving. A coworker named Thomas mentioned it to me over lunch. "You should enter," he said. "You're one of the few people I know who could actually win this thing." I thanked him and let my mind work. This competition wasn't just an opportunity for me professionally. It was a tool, a perfect tool for what I needed to do. I could create an opportunity under my management. I could control the variables. I could orchestrate situations and watch how Hannah and Elliot responded. If I played this right, I could use their own ambition against them. Small victories at work that day, closing a deal early, impressing my boss with a new strategy, gave me confidence. I was thinking clearly now. I was seeing possibilities. I was starting to feel something I hadn't felt in days. Hope. Over the next week, I gathered intelligence. I watched Hannah and Elliot carefully, observing their habits, their weaknesses, the ways they interacted with each other. I discovered that Elliot had lied about a major work project. He'd taken credit for something he didn't do. I learned that Hannah was prone to panic when things didn't go according to plan. I found out that they were both incredibly competitive with each other, always trying to one-up one another, always playing games to prove who was smarter. I also discovered something crucial. They trusted me even less now that they'd stolen from me. They thought I was broken, defeated, completely focused on survival. They didn't think I was capable of strategic thinking. That was their biggest mistake. The paranoia was there, circling in my mind, the constant awareness of what they'd done, the way they could destroy me if things went wrong. But it mixed with determination. Cold, focused determination. I engineered the first test at home. It was small, just a game really. I suggested we have a competition to see who could reorganize the garage most efficiently. Elliot laughed. He said it was beneath him. Hannah rolled her eyes and said she had better things to do. But I sweetened the pot. There was money involved, a small amount, nothing significant. They both immediately changed their minds. The competition began on Saturday morning. I watched as they both threw themselves into it, their arrogance making them careless. Elliot took shortcuts that left the job half-finished. Hannah got frustrated and started blaming me for not giving clear enough instructions. They both failed spectacularly, and when I pointed out their mistakes, their smug faces turned red with anger. Hannah stormed out of the garage. Elliot threw down his tools and muttered about how this is stupid. The victory was small, but it was real, and it showed me something important. Their arrogance would be their downfall if I knew how to push the right buttons. The next step was to engineer situations at work. Through a mutual friend, I arranged for Hannah and Elliot to be invited to a company event where I knew they'd interact with my colleagues. I didn't orchestrate anything major. I just made sure they were there. I watched as Hannah tried to impress my boss by exaggerating her own accomplishments. I heard her take credit for work she hadn't done. I saw the way my colleagues exchanged looks, noticing that what she was saying didn't match reality. Later, I overheard my boss telling another executive that he found her a bit dishonest. The first public humiliation for Hannah was complete, and she had no idea I'd set it up. With Elliot, I invited him to a work dinner and sat back while he dominated the conversation with stories that were clearly exaggerated. By the end of the night, people were openly skeptical of everything he said. Hannah noticed what was happening. She pulled me aside and asked why I seemed so confident, why I kept smiling. "What are you doing?" she asked suspiciously. "Nothing," I said calmly. "Just living my life." She didn't believe me, but she couldn't prove anything either. A few weeks later, I approached both of them with an opportunity. I told them about a new position opening up at my company, a mid-level management role with excellent salary and benefits. I said I could get them interviews. I said I thought they'd both be perfect for it. Their eyes lit up like I just handed them the world. What they didn't know was that the position didn't exist yet. I was creating it specifically for them. I told them that due to the competitive nature of business, only one position was available. You'll be competing against each other, I explained. May the best person win. Hannah and Elliot both eagerly accepted. They were so blinded by ambition and greed that they didn't stop to wonder why their victim, the man they'd stolen from, was suddenly offering them opportunity. Their arrogance was complete. The first task in the competition was a strategic analysis of a client problem. I gave them both the same information and asked them to develop solutions. They worked separately, not knowing how the other was approaching the challenge. I watched as they worked, Hannah trying to be innovative, Elliot trying to be meticulous, but I saw the flaws in both approaches immediately. More importantly, I noticed Elliot sneaking around, trying to look at Hannah's work when he thought no one was watching. He was sabotaging her, changing small details in her documentation to make her look careless. Hannah caught him doing it and went ballistic. They fought right there in the break room, their fury on display in front of 3 other employees. By the end, they were both so angry with each other that they could barely look at one another. I'd brought them to collision without lifting a finger. I'd simply given them an opportunity and let their own nature do the work. The competition continued, and with each task, I learned more about how to manipulate them. I'd subtly manipulate situations to push them toward exposing their own flaws. One task involved client relationship management. I gave them scenarios where they had to make difficult decisions. Hannah's choices revealed her insecurity. She constantly second-guessed herself. Elliot's choices revealed his sociopathy. He was willing to throw anyone under the bus to save himself. By feeding their egos with subtle praise in the right moments, I could push them to take bigger risks, to be more aggressive, to expose themselves more fully. Hannah began to doubt Elliot completely. She started making mistakes because she was so focused on trying to stop him from sabotaging her. The siblings who'd united to steal from me were now at each other's throats. And the beautiful part was that I was controlling the game the entire time. They had no idea. They thought they were competing against each other. They didn't realize they were actually performing for me, revealing all their weaknesses, all their character flaws, all the reasons they deserved what was coming. Then I gained an unexpected ally. A colleague named Kevin came to me and told me that Elliot had been bragging about stealing from me. Kevin said Elliot was proud of it, telling people how he and Hannah had cleaned out her brother-in-law without getting caught. Kevin said he thought it was despicable and wanted me to know. The anger that flooded through me was intense, but I controlled it. I thanked Kevin quietly and asked him not to tell anyone else. Having that information, knowing that Elliot was bragging about his crime, was leverage. It was powerful leverage. It meant other people knew. It meant there was a witness. It meant that when everything came to light, people would believe me. The emotional tension rose another notch. My plan was working better than I'd imagined possible. I arranged a scenario at work with the senior executives watching. The task was a presentation to a mock client panel. I made sure the rules were clear. Whoever gave the better presentation would get the job. Hannah went first. She was polished, professional, confident, but she'd made a critical error. She completely misunderstood the client's actual needs. Her solution was elegant but useless. The executives noticed immediately. Then Elliot went. He started strong. But halfway through, I deliberately planted a piece of contradictory information in the briefing materials that only he would have access to. When he hit that contradiction, he panicked. He started making excuses, blaming others, refusing to take responsibility. The executives exchanged looks of disappointment. By the end of the presentation, they'd lost all respect for both of them. Hannah's credibility was destroyed. Elliot looked like an incompetent fool. I watched in the back of the room, expressionless, while my boss turned to me and said, "Thank God we have you, Mark." Elliot started falling apart after that. His pride had been his foundation, and I'd systematically dismantled it. He began to crack, making bigger mistakes, taking more desperate risks to try to recover his position. One task involved managing a team project. Elliot overreached completely, taking on too much, trying to prove he was still capable. Of course, he failed. Spectacularly. The team complained about his lack of organization. The deliverables were late. The quality was poor. I predicted every single misstep. I watched as the recognition of his failure dawned on him. He looked at me across the conference room, and for just a moment, I saw confusion in his eyes. He was starting to suspect that something wasn't right. He was beginning to wonder if maybe this competition wasn't random, if maybe I was orchestrating this somehow. But he couldn't quite figure out how. The confusion was beautiful to watch. Hannah made a last-ditch effort to regain control. She tried a sneaky move. She attempted to access confidential files about Elliot's past performance at the company. She thought if she could find something damaging about him, she could use it to eliminate him from the competition and secure the position for herself. But I'd anticipated her desperation. I'd already restricted her access to those files weeks ago, just in case. When she tried to access them, the attempt was logged. When I reported it to my boss, it looked like she was trying to cheat the system. The executives were horrified. Hannah's face went white when I calmly explained what she tried to do. I was just trying to understand the process, she stammered. No one believed her. The schadenfreude I felt was almost overwhelming. She tried to outsmart me, and I'd already thought 3 steps ahead. Hannah confronted me that night. We were alone in our bedroom, and she grabbed my arm. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "Why are you doing this?" Her voice was shaking. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to tell her exactly what she'd taken from me, to make her feel even a fraction of the betrayal I'd felt. But I stayed calm. "I don't know what you mean," I said quietly. "You're competing for a job. Some people win, some people lose." She stared at me with a mixture of fear and fury. "This isn't random," she hissed. "You're orchestrating this. You're making us fail." "Am I?" I asked, "or are you just failing on your own?" I pulled my arm away from her and walked out of the room. My composure, my refusal to give her the satisfaction of my anger, kept me in control. That was the most powerful weapon I had. Days later, Hannah and Elliot made a critical mistake. They decided to team up. They thought if they worked together, they could somehow figure out what I was doing and stop me. They met in secret, or so they thought. I knew about it because I'd arranged to have Kevin keep an eye out. They planned to sabotage the next competition task together, to work against me directly instead of against each other. But I'd already thought about this possibility. I designed the final task specifically for a situation like this. When they tried to execute their plan, the very nature of the task made their teamwork impossible. The task required individual decision-making and personal accountability. The moment they tried to coordinate, their approach fell apart. And when their approach fell apart, everything they tried to hide came to light. Both of them failed the task so completely that the executives demanded an explanation. I watched from a distance as they tried to explain what went wrong. Their story didn't make sense. It sounded like they were blaming each other. It sounded like chaos. It sounded like the truth, that they'd been working together to cheat the system. Hannah made one final desperate move. She tried to sabotage my own performance at work, thinking that if I looked bad, the executives would lose faith in me too. She doctored some of my reports, trying to make it look like I'd made errors. It was clever. It almost worked, but I'd been prepared for this. I had clean copies of all my original work backed up in multiple places. I also had timestamps showing exactly when my documents had been altered and by whom. When I presented this evidence to my boss, Hannah's sabotage attempt became the final nail in her coffin. She'd crossed a line from competition into criminal behavior. I noticed a small detail in her attempt. The way she'd accessed my files, the time she'd done it, that revealed she planned this carefully. But not carefully enough. I'd always been one step ahead. Elliot's weak spot was his relationship with Hannah. He'd always been insecure about his position in the family, always trying to prove he was worthy of their love. When I exploited that, when I engineered situations where Hannah publicly blamed him for failures, he fell apart emotionally. I watched as the sibling relationship cracked further and further. He'd look at Hannah with hurt in his eyes, and she'd deliberately turn away from him. They'd stopped being allies. They'd stopped being a team. They were now isolated, alone, each one facing the consequences of their actions by themselves. The justice of it began to feel real. The stakes of the competition increased. I informed both of them that the final task would determine everything, not just a job, but my recommendation to the executives about their character and their future at the company. The pressure mounted visibly. Elliot started having stress dreams. I could see it in his exhausted face at breakfast. Hannah snapped at everyone, her patience completely gone. They were both breaking under the weight of the competition, under the realization that their arrogance had consequences. One morning, during a critical task, Elliot completely panicked. He was supposed to present a solution to a complex business problem in front of the full executive board. He froze. His mind went blank. He stood there stammering, unable to articulate even basic thoughts. The executives watched in uncomfortable silence. It was painful to watch, but I felt no sympathy. This man had stolen everything from me. This man had bragged about it. He deserved this moment.